This presentation is a brief introduction to R and RStudio. It will mainly be about variables. It assumes that you've already installed R and RStudio. Open up the RStudio application. For me, it was on my menu. There was an RStudio folder with an RStudio icon inside. I'm going to use the concept of a script, which is a way to save code and be able to use it another time. So go to the menu, File, New File, and choose RScript. I wanted to name my script right away, so I went to File on the menu and chose Save As, and then in the dialog box that opened up, I choose a location. So me, it was in Documents and in a folder, and then I gave the file a name with the .r extension that's usual for R programs, and finally click the Save button. I'm starting my program off with some comments. Comments in R start with a pound sign, or you might also call it a hashtag. They turn the color green to sort of give you a visual indication that it is a comment. A comment has no effect on how the program will execute, and it's more just for a human reader of your script. So it often describes the program itself. So my comment is describing what variables do, since this program is an introduction to variables. A variable is a letter or a combination of letters. You might also include numbers and an underscore, things like that. The variable is going to stand in for something, its value, which is going to typically be a number. And then, as the name variable suggests, that value might change. In the little bit of code we are showing here, we're considering a problem from physics where we throw an object up with a velocity v. It experiences an acceleration due to gravity g, and it achieves some maximum height h_max. So that's how we've named our variables, and we are assigning them numbers, values that they will have in our calculation. So in the first assignment, we say that v equals 17.5. So v will have a value, the velocity v will have a value of 17.5 within our calculation. Another way to assign a variable is to use a sort of a left-pointing arrow, sort of a less than sign followed by a dash. And that is just another way of assigning. And what it's trying to sort of indicate is another way of thinking about a computer program variable is that it's a memory location somewhere in your computer. And so that's sort of indicating that the value of 9.8 is being put into that memory location that we're calling G. The last assignment involves a calculation before the assignment. So on the right-hand side of the expression, we have v caret 2 / g. So we're taking our value of v, 17.5, we are squaring it, we're dividing it by the value g, and then when we get that result, that will be assigned to a memory location that we associate with the name h_max. Now actually, none of these variables have been assigned yet because we're just writing code. The actual assigning will occur when we execute the code. And the results of executing the code are going to show down below in the console region. But first we're going to clear out the sort of default stuff that RStudio has there in the console so that we will only see the stuff from our program after we clear it out. Go to the menu, find Edit, drop down to Clear Console, or use the keyboard shortcut Ctrl+L. You can run a single line of code by highlighting it and then hitting the Run seen at the top, or by clicking on the keyboard Ctrl+Enter. Then the results of running that line of code will appear down in the console. And you can choose a selection of code, multiple lines of code, and do the same. Highlight them, click on Run, or use Ctrl+Enter from the keyboard. There are also a variety of ways to run code found on the menu under Code Runs, a code run region, Run All, for instance. As we've said, the results of running the code are shown down in the console area. But since the code here was also assignment statements, the results are also over in the environmental region shown on the right. Here we're emphasizing the fact that as a variable, the value of v can change. So we've changed it to 23.4 and re-executed the code to do a new calculation of hmax, which can be seen over in the environment variable. You might also note that on the left-hand side, the tab at the top is red. Variable intro.r is now in red, and that's an indication that I have not saved. So I have changed something in my script and have not saved it. Next, we are considering an example from chemistry where the variables will correspond to atomic masses. So we have a variable C, which is 12.011. And I am using capital letters for C, H, N, and O. And it's not important that it's a capital letter per se, but it's important that I be consistent. So when I go on to do some calculation with these variables, the computer will recognize a capital C as 12.011, and it will be confused by and have no value for a small c if I were to use it. I'm also showing you a third way to assign a variable that explicitly uses the word assign. It says assign open parenthesis quote capital O end quote comma 15.999 close parenthesis. Just another way of assigning a variable. After I have assigned the atomic masses, I can use them to calculate molecular masses. And so here I'm doing a calculation of capital C times 8 plus capital H times 10 plus capital N times 4 plus capital O times 2, and I'm getting a result down in the console you can see of 194.194. One thing to note here is because that result is not assigned to anything, it will be down in the console, but it will not be in the environment region on the right. If I want to save the result of the calculation, then I assign it to yet another variable. So here I've made that variable caffeine and set the calculation on the right-hand side equal to the name of the variable on the left-hand side. And then when I execute that code, the result will appear both down in the console and in the environment region. But in the console region, the 194.194 you see is when we did the calculation without assigning it. You do not see the result, the numerical result, down in the console. If you wanted to see the numerical result down in the console, you could just repeat the word caffeine, and then that would sort of print the numerical value down in the console. But without printing it to the console, it is saved over into the global environment section over on the right. Here I have closed my R script and then reopened it in RStudio. After freshly installing RStudio and doing this for the first time, I had to use open with and train my computer to open a .r extension file with RStudio. You see that when you open a script, the console goes back to the default console. It has not remembered any of the results of running your code. This is the purpose of saving the script, because when you close RStudio, it's not going to remember the state of the console of what you've done, but you will have the code and you can easily rerun it. On the other hand, the environment variables were saved in this instance. And then if I decided that I did not want them saved, I would use the little broom icon and sort of sweep out that environment section over on the right. When learning R programming, it's important to practice. You will inevitably make a mistake, and then you will have to learn how to find that mistake, what programmers call debugging. So let's take my molecular mass of caffeine program and adapt it and find the molecular masses of fructose, sucrose, and lysine.